Coming up next on Access Framingham TV is Framingham Fan to Fan, where we discuss all things sports in Framingham. Today we'll talk skateboarding with two of the earliest advocates for a skate park. It's going to be jumpy, fast-paced, and a lot of fun. This is Framingham Fan to Fan on Access Framingham TV. Hi, I'm Dave Hornfischer, a Framingham sports fan, and I'm pleased to host this interview show whose purpose is to highlight those who are involved in Framingham sports at all levels. We hope through this show to increase awareness and ideally fan support and participation in these fun sporting events, and also to help use sports to access our station's goal of building community. Today I'm pleased to welcome Judith Grove and Wolfgang Breves, two of the earliest advocates for a skate park in Framingham. Judy and Wolfgang, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, I know it's so exciting that the park is done and it's dedicated, but you know, there was probably some times in the past decade or so, maybe longer, that this was a kind of still a dream, right? And I know both of you were really involved in making this, not only being advocates for it, but being sure that it got built and helping build it. So I'm really eager to hear a little more of both your stories. So Judy, why don't you start by just telling me a little bit about how you got interested in this and what I know was a long road and a few sentences to talk about.
Well, I'm an unlikely advocate for something like skateboarding. I'd never even seen a skateboard before I got involved. I got involved because I was a town meeting member and I wanted to see if we could improve Mary Dennison Park. When I went down there, 17 acres, I didn't see any children there except a few kids playing basketball. When I asked the kids why they weren't at the park, they said there was nothing to do. There's no soccer field, baseball fields. So I did a survey of 800 people and I asked what they wanted, and I kept hearing they wanted a skate park. It sounded like an urban myth that there was going to be a skate park once. So I started doing the research. I was on Ways and Means and found out it started in 2000. And then when I got involved, I fell in love with the whole concept and decided we would get it built.
We have a couple of photos that kind of describe some of the committees and some of the master planning effort that went into this back around, what was it, 2013?
That's right. There was actually an open space master plan. It seemed perfect. I went to the meeting and they said the goal was to build facilities that kids needed that didn't exist already, but also that would meet different populations. When reading about sports, I found out that 70% of children by the age of 13 have dropped out of organized sports. And so we needed something that kids, especially kids at risk, could do. The kids in this neighborhood didn't have transportation, they didn't have parents who tossed the ball around with them. Skateboard park seemed like the perfect solution.
And then there were some selectmen's meetings that you finally got on the boards of the agenda. This is in what, 14 and 15 and
Well, that was what we decided, was that we had to bring attention to it. Nobody talked about skateboarding, so we had very public meetings. We had a skate jam in front of the town hall. Wolfgang's right in the middle there. That was a bitter cold day, and they didn't skate, but we talked about it. And we also had a meeting at the library. But the biggest thing that we did, and the hardest thing, was for the skateboarders to speak in front of the Board of Selectmen.
And you had a very famous meeting with that, with a whole bunch of them, I understand,
yes,
at one time. And you were really a part of this from the very beginning too, Wolfgang. Why don't you tell me a little bit about, let's go back a step from this to how skating connected with you in your life, and especially the lack of stuff in Framingham. And
yeah, of course. Like Judith was saying, I did organized sports too when I was growing up, and I was one of the 70% who dropped out, and it just didn't fit in for me. So I needed something else to do, and I picked up skateboarding when I was about 10. And maybe 7 or 8 years later, I had found some friends to skateboard with in the town of Framingham, and it was through them that I actually met Judith and got involved in the whole project. I had a park in Sherborne, which is the town I'm originally from, and I came to Framingham thinking that they would also have a skate park. But when I realized they didn't, And when I learned about the movement that was beginning to start in Framingham, I decided this is something that I want to help with.
So where did you skate before? I mean, did you skate in parking lots or stairs of churches? Or
I skated all around. I mean, skateboarding, street skateboarding in particular, is a culture of being able to skate wherever you can find it. But of course there are skate parks. I mean, I grew up and learned most of what I know from my hometown skate park. And it's a very special place to me. So part of what was shocking about there not being a skate park in Framingham was the fact that I, someone from another town who had associated a skate park with such an important place in my life, I knew that wasn't a reality for all the youth in Framingham.
so when you began to make your presentations, you had to talk about the benefits of skateboarding, and people had concerns about the liability. Why don't we're going to bring up a couple of charts here, and we can talk a little bit. Why don't we start with the good news first, and the benefits of skateboarding that are.
All right. First of all, I knew nothing about skateboarding, and I knew that we had a fight on our hands. So I knew we had to give the benefits. The first one was obvious, the cost. If you talk about organized sports, most kids need to pay registration fees, they need transportation, they need equipment. I was recently thinking about figure skating. Figure skating, you need coaches, you need ice, you need money for skates and costumes, but they're very similar because figure skating requires creativity, coordination, and athleticism. So there's a lot in common there. But then I was thinking about skating is on a flat surface. And most skate rinks are the same. The kids who skateboard are skating on stairs. They skated at the train station. And if they skate at a park like Wolfgang's saying, you want to go to different parks. You want to see what they have to offer. So one of the benefits I saw to Framingham was that it would bring people here. If they would go to Hopkinton, I looked at every skate park in the region, to Hudson, to Milford, wherever there was a skate park, they'd come to Framingham.
Here's some more of the benefits.
Yeah, so the benefits included community benefits, but the athleticism, the perseverance that's required, Wolfgang should really speak about that part of it.
Yeah, why don't you tell a little bit about how one gets good at skateboarding? Is it?
Sure, yeah. I mean, how to get good at skateboarding. I mean,
do it.
It works well. It works well playing off the benefits that we're talking about. So something that I think especially unique about skateboarding is that I like to say it's more about falling than it is about landing a trick. And that's a very powerful message for a young person, especially like in a world where I personally believe like you need to fail, right? You need to fail to learn. And skateboarding is nothing but failure. And it doesn't get better as you get better. You just keep falling. So that lesson is a very important one, that it is good for kids to learn, and hopefully through a sport than with something where the stakes are higher. You know?
And then we have the issue about the liability of it. I think everybody, when the town thought about doing this, you had to convince people that the liability was reasonable.
That was the main hurdle. And of course, I learned that you can have a blanket umbrella policy. Every sport we play, you're playing at your own risk on our fields. But what was really interesting were the actual statistics. It turned out that the sport with the most injuries is basketball. Because
I have one.
you do repetitive motion. You hurt your shoulder, you hurt your ankle. In skateboarding, usually the accidents happen in the very beginning, but you learn to protect yourself. You learn there are laws in skateboarding, and one of them is the law of gravity, in that there are some things that really are impossible to do. So, but as a skateboarder, you have to decide that. You have to be in charge of what's happening with yourself. And you learn. We would like people to wear helmets, but people ask why we're not requiring it. If we require it, and we don't enforce it, then we're liable.
There's a sign, picture
Yes.
coming up there is the welcoming sign to the town.
Yeah.
It says, use at your own risk.
But in terms of the numbers, basketball 7 times the injuries. They actually checked emergency room for sports injuries per numbers of skaters. And then there's football and hockey. Skateboarding actually rates with cheerleading for injuries. And usually you get a lot of scrapes and burns. I had an interesting discussion with Wolfgang about our park and the finish on it. And what did you say to me the other day?
Yeah, we were on the phone talking about the new skate park in Framingham, and I when I review skate parks in my head, I always think about the quality of a fall there. So if you're on regular old pavement, when you fall, you'll get like scraped up, and sometimes you find pavement that like pulls on you. I'm sorry, it's a little graphic, but it gives you like road burns.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to say, but the Framingham skate park is actually pretty nice to fall on, as I have multiple times.
I actually watched them when they were building it, and it was a real art. There's a designer and then there's a builder. As they poured the concrete, there were 3 workers moving after each other, smoothing the concrete out with special brooms. So the surface is very smooth in the skate park. One of the issues was that a lot of skate parks are made of wood when they talk about injuries. And platforms, I visited every park in the region. I was very surprised to see that Lexington had a beautiful looking skate park, but it was on a piece of asphalt with platforms placed on the asphalt. So the interface between the platform and the ground is not a smooth one. Our park really flows from one area to another. So those dangers are gone because of it.
We have a couple of pictures coming up of the park here that, first of all, the site is gorgeous.
Oh.
You know, and I mean, look at that.
There
I
it
mean, with
is.
the lake
Yeah,
and back,
and the
and
lake.
you know, and the park, and there's another one that just kind of shows the integration of the
I guess we can't show, if we could show the picture. What was wonderful about the location, Wolfgang, the first meeting we had with the majority of our group, about a dozen, was at that site. We walked down Dudley Road. The reason we went there was they almost built a skate park across the street behind Loring Arena. So we said, let's meet over there to see where the skate park was going to be. We're sitting there, we turned around, we looked at the lake, and we said, we'll build it here. And that was just a big joke. We never thought we'd get it. So then we had to convince them for the location. And these were the factors you had to look at. It had to satisfy the problem of what they thought of as noise. But skate parks are not inherently noisy. They're no noisier than a baseball field. When a skateboard it's a beautiful sound to me when I hear the skateboards.
It's kind of a hum.
But
and,
if they jump and they do a trick, there's a sound like a baseball bat. Well, we said we have to consider who the neighbors are. Well, we don't have any neighbors there. We have the lake. We had to consider that skate parks got a bad reputation because they were built in the worst neighborhoods. They were built under roads, they were built in vacant lots where there was no visibility. We wanted maximum visibility. You don't do much better than Dudley Road. You needed other sports in the area that people would be walking by. You needed an area where people could see. We have the hills surrounding the skate park. You can sit on a beautiful hill under a tree and watch it. You have a ball field across the road, and I often think when I see the ball players going that they wish they were going to the skate park instead.
Well, some of them, as they were striking out and about to be the 70%, maybe they did.
So we advocated
Then you
for
had
it.
this wonderful dedication event that just happened, and I know both of you were given a lot of credit for your involvement there. Some of the crowd, the mayor was there, and the rec people, and a whole lot of people, and it was really a lot of fun. They had the ribbon cutting coming up, and I was impressed they had such a young boy cut the ribbon.
Yeah, I actually don't know that young boy. The main person who's not mentioned here is James McCarthy. He was 10 when he started, and James was there, and his name is on the plaque. He's now 24. And James will be here tonight. There he is. Yeah. There's my name and James.
Yeah. Let's leave that up for a few seconds so we can give credit to the committees.
And it turns out he grew up in Framingham. He didn't quit. He was 10 when he was on a commission for youth at risk. They were trying to find a way to keep kids out of trouble, and they came up with the idea of the skate park. He was through the 2 times it almost got built, but he never quit. And I met him first. James is at a poetry reading tonight. He does poetry, and he skateboards, and he makes videos on skateboarding, so he couldn't be here. But he did get credit. His mother was there, and she said that James's grandfather helped build the park years ago.
Really?
So it was a very special event for them to be there. Wolfgang was the one, we had phases. So James was the beginning to 2014, and then Wolfgang took it from there to getting it built. At that point, James had moved away. He was on our committee, but he had moved out of Framingham.
Okay, well, we've spent we're probably a little more than halfway through the show here, and we've talked about getting it built and all that. Let's just actually talk about the place itself. I have a photo here, I think, of the of one of the features in the park that's coming up. Yeah, and what fascinated me is this blue line. Wolfgang, why don't you talk a little bit about what that is? It just stands out so. The kind of what do you call it? A ramp or a
Well, yeah, it does stand out. It's in the center of the park. It's I'm not sure what I would call it, although it's on some type of island, this three-pronged thing, and it's very difficult to skateboard on.
I would imagine.
It is an advanced feature, if not only because of its
okay, here's another picture.
Strange.
This is actually good because this shows a bunch of the features in the park, the sloping up, and even the railing on the far side. We have some videos coming up later of people doing successful moves on there and some not so successful. But
Why do you think it's so hard to skate that?
Well, when it comes to this
now.
specific park, those features that we're looking at right now are more of the street section, right? So they have a hip, which is the corner of that pyramid that people are jumping on top of, and then they have the rail. These are all like indicative of street things you would find in like a city street. But on the other side of the park, where where the cameraman is standing, I can imagine, is the vert, the ramp part of the park.
Here's another video, and there's a little more focus, I think, on this one. On the
you can
railing.
see some more ramps around, and you can see the blue thing that we were talking about earlier, and that's just right in the middle of the transition between the two types of skate parks that are within this one skate park. There's a ramp transition area and a skate
Talk about
section.
what is the definition of transition, vert, and street skating?
Yeah, sure. So, street skating, like I said a little bit earlier, a street skate park works to mimic what's going on in a city. So handrails, staircases, ledges, all things that you see just in the natural world, right? And then for transition, these are ramps. So this is taken from the West Coast back when skateboarding was created by surfers. It's supposed to mimic waves in the ocean.
How far back does this go?
I mean, skateboarding's not so old. No. 60s, 70s.
Tony Hawk is the name that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I mean,
skateboarder, right?
You think about it, the four founders are still relatively young. So it's not an old sport. But then vert, the final part is vertical. So meaning literally vertical waves. You can actually see if you examine a vert ramp that it like pushes you off as you near the top. And that's the third type that you asked me to clarify.
Yeah, and our skateboarders wanted the street skating. They, you will see parks. Hudson has a park that's a complete bowl.
Yeah.
You can't see into it unless you're one of the skaters. But the Framingham skaters didn't want that. They wanted the street skate. So we have some of the other. We have some bowls on the front part, but I think that one of the things you're thinking about is what else could be done with this park. We're not ready to say that's it, it's done. We wanted it bigger. We wanted more to it. And so you come up with the question of how much money.
And this is almost 10,000 square feet.
I think it's almost that.
It's a big park.
Yeah, and in terms of a park,
that's
you were showing me a chart before. You mentioned there was some different kinds of skate parks, spots and dots. And is that something that, well tell me first what it is, and then I'm just kind of interested as to whether there's some opportunities in other places in Framingham to have some spots and dots.
I think that's something you could talk about, the spots and dots.
Of course. So, I mean, in recent history, skateboarding has been more focused in skate parks. So, in the beginning, where it was kind of just every man for himself trying to find a spot in the street to skateboard, or like breaking into backyard pools and skateboarding those when they were empty, it's now been more regulated. So there are skate parks almost in every town, right? And like a dot would be like the smallest possible, maybe one feature that you would see on the side of the road and be like, oh, we got to stop and skateboard on that. And that's more like calling back to the history of skateboarding. And then spots are a little bit better. There's a place known as Eggs in Boston, and it's basically It's right near the Charles River. There are these egg-shaped monuments.
Oh,
People
yeah.
skateboard there a lot. That's a spot, right? It's a well-known spot.
Are there places in Framingham, such as Bowditch Field or
Yeah,
wherever
oh.
else they could put
The
something
train
like this?
station.
Train station.
bench
The train
was
station's a
used.
spot.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
skated there before.
Yeah.
And then they have neighborhood skate parks. The park I grew up skating is a neighborhood skate park. It's small. Community,
Okay,
a
but
bit larger.
we're going to be redoing Mary Dennison Park. There should be a dot there or a spot.
Absolutely.
Those kids aren't going to be able to get to this. We're happy with the location.
Right,
It's,
but-
it's not in their neighborhood where it was going to be,
It's-
but at least the older kids can get there. And one of the things I love about skateboarding is it's a form of transportation. I see people going by on their skateboards on their way to the skate park.
Yeah,
Well,
you know where they're going.
Yeah.
And some on their bicycles too, because I see people
Yeah.
bicycles
Yeah.
on the park too. Right?
And that was a decision, we definitely knew we would have bikes in it. If we said no, they would have still been there.
Right.
And
That's
I
true.
asked Wolfgang how to get along with the bikes and the scooters on the park.
Yeah. Well, when it gets down to it, skateboarding is known as an outcast sport. So the people who don't fit in are skateboarders, right? And
The 70%.
The se-
Most of us don't
Could
fit
be.
in.
right, and that's true. And I think a lot of people forget that, but like we skateboard because we don't fit in. So I think it's important that every skateboarder realizes how important it is to be inclusive to all action sports, right? So there are bikers, there are scooters, and I'm sure like there are some stigmas against certain types of action sports, and I'm sure I've heard it like there's stigmas against scooters and bikers for maybe the way their pegs destroy the park.
Yeah, we worry about that.
Yeah. So,
Pegs, if they land on the concrete, they can crack it. We don't
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't want to see that.
but when it gets down to it, at the end of the day, they're just like us. They just use a different medium to express themselves. So,
You also were talking to me beforehand about this as an art and an art form.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and you very nicely mentioned something about the artist in you when you're skating.
yeah,
Can you talk to that a little bit?
yeah, of course. So the way I see skateboarding, and it's a little corny, but if you think about a skate park or a skate spot, you think of it as a blank canvas, right? And you need a tool to paint with. So you choose your skateboard. Your skateboard is your paintbrush, and then you can paint a picture on the landscape with the tricks that you create. And every painting is different. People bring different styles, different tricks. And at the end of the day, you can look back at the spot that you were skateboarding and you see that you've created a picture. And that picture can be the memory of skating in that spot. Or a video, if you're so inclined to film it,
Yeah.
which a lot of skateboarders
do.
do. It's
They
to
do
tie in the
film.
culture.
Yeah.
Do any people ever
It's a big
ever
one.
put a little ink on the bottom of their skates? And
Oh man, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a video out there of something like that. That's a good idea, though. I may
no,
take
it's a
it from
bad
you.
idea. Probably the Parks and Rec people are going to kill me.
Yeah,
for
not at the
suggesting
Framingham Park.
No, please don't do that. That was
One of the things I think about with the skate park is when the leaves fall. We talked about that. What happens when the park needs to be maintained? Skate parks are one of the least draining of a parks department. There's really virtually nothing for them to do. You don't have a lawn that you have to take care of. You don't have to draw lines for people. So the one thing is when the leaves fall, and they said to me, "Oh, we'll rake them up. We'll sweep them up." I even wonder when it snows if people will be out there. Have you seen that? Are they out in skate parks even if it's snowing?
Not typically. I
Not
mean,
typically.
I remember when I was growing up, I would always be the one to shovel the skate park. But when it comes to clearing leaves, if you have a leaf blower, it doesn't take very long to just finish the
to
park.
get it.
Yeah,
And
but if
people
the
will do
leaves
it.
stick to the ground, couldn't that be dangerous?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have to have
it is
some
dangerous.
advanced kind of cleaning, I would guess. Where do we go from here? I mean, we talked about another little park, maybe at Denison, a spot or something, and other places. And this facility, is there room here to expand this a little bit, or to add some new features over time, or?
Yeah,
What do you
absolutely.
think?
I think
What
that
section of the park? Do you have a picture of the skate park where he might?
Maybe we could go back to one of the earlier
Looking at
photos.
it.
Maybe the.
We definitely want a skate spot at Mary Dennison.
Absolutely.
That's a given. But this park itself was going to be bigger. It was going to have a section for the younger skaters to come in. If you
there's a
look to
picture right here
to the
somewhere.
left, there was going to be an area up high where the little playground is, and they were going to feed into this. And then they decided they didn't have enough funding for it. So
And they built
looking
that
down
rain,
there,
They built that rain thing.
the rain garden's
the rain
wonderful
garden.
because the water sheets right down, and that was the natural drainage of the land. That work of DPW made our skate park bigger because we didn't have to pay for the landscaping.
Oh.
That's a big part of the budget. They
cool.
also said that when they dug up the land, they had no problems. They had big boulders which they moved and used, but they didn't find any problems with the land. So it might have been a lot smaller. But when I looked at it, I thought, why does it just drop off at the end where the rain garden is? So I wondered, what do you think? That if you skate in that direction, how do you return?
Yeah, it all does seem to go north to south. I mean, is that typical?
Well, something about skate parks is, especially when they get bigger, like the one that we have in Framingham, is there are certain considerations of how the skate park flows that you need to consider. So, if you're a moving object like a skateboard and you drop in or you start at one part of the park, where do you naturally get sent to? And in the case of the Framingham Park, in the street section, you get sent back and forth, which is nice and typical of a lot of skate parks.
That's the main.
And the transition section, the part with all the ramps, you can actually see just from the photos shown here that most of the photos are of the street section. And that's because most of the people are concentrated in the street section. There aren't many photos of the ramps because no one's usually skating there. And that's because when you build one ramp, you have to build another ramp, right? Equal and opposite. So if there's a bunch of ramps on one side of the park, it's begging there to be ramps of the opposite side on the other side of the park. Yeah,
And just
so
kind
you
of
complete
flow
the
almost
circle.
like a merry-go-round or something.
Yeah. So there's absolutely so much potential with Framingham Park for an extension in the
So
future.
are there any kind of events planned to have tournaments there or shows or bring in some fancy skaters and charge admission or something? Or is there a revenue opportunity here is what the finance guy in me naturally wants to know.
I mean, I do wonder, because in the time that I've spent skateboarding there, I've already met 3 professional skateboarders that I've never met any before. And then just right after this park is built, I meet Dave Baczynski, who's a Boston native.
Okay.
He's from Boston. Brandon Westgate, another professional. I think he lives in Massachusetts. I'm not sure. And also Anthony Shetler, who came to the opening day event.
Anthony's wonderful.
3 professional
So the
skateboarders.
reputation's
They're attracted to the
only
park.
going to get out here, right? So,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a hobby. You know, those people have to get to every state capital. They have to get to every skate park.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of people say it's the best skate park that they've been to.
Well, kudos definitely to you, to the both of you, for your persistence, for your energy, and to all the people that you brought along and got into this, getting town meeting to approve it, getting the selectmen, getting the new mayor and the city councilor to wrap it up and put the good housekeeping seal on all of your work. You know, that's really great to have active citizens like this, and it's what makes Framingham such a great place, is that we do have a lot of energetic people and people that don't give up. And so you get an A for the skate park, but you get an A+ for persistence. So congratulations to both of you. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Dave.
You've been great guests, and this
Thank
has
you
been
very
a
much.
terrific show. And I think anybody that's interested in this new facility should drive by. There's always somebody there.
Even to watch, just
I
to
know.
watch.
Oh, I'm
I love
amazed.
it.
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Of course.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.